So welcome back to the show, Dr. Nik. And let's just start out, plunge right into the anatomy of the shoulder and talk about why it's so easy to get a shoulder injury.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Deborah. I really appreciate being here. So
Our pleasure.
couple of key things that you should understand around the shoulder. Number one, it is the most mobile joint in your body. It has the largest range of motion of any other joint because of the ball and socket shape. And this inherently means you have to trade off mobility for stability. So it means that the muscles have to work extra hard to stabilize this joint. And the more aggressive we become with our actions, the more repetitive actions we do, the more difficult it becomes for your body to stabilize that. So we see a lot of shoulder injuries because of a multitude of underlying factors, and anatomy is one of the key things to get. So if we're looking at the basic anatomy, there are 4 rotator cuff muscles, and unlike most joints, they provide a full 50% of the stability of your shoulder. So that means if these small muscles aren't strong and firing correctly, it can lead to shoulder pathology issues. So some examples that you might have heard of would be something like supraspinatus that runs across at the top right here, infraspinatus and teres minor, and one that's often damaged in baseball pitchers is going to be subscapularis on the inside as well. So we usually see our impingement syndromes up here at the top with supraspinatus, and we see our biceps long head, and also the subscapularis potentially being involved as well. So those are the key muscles that are players. If we take it a step deeper, then we have ligaments around this joint that provide stability. And if we take it a step deeper than that, then we can see the actual bony shape and the labrums and all of this stuff. And even the way that your shoulder moves. If anybody's watching and you want to do an experiment, all you have to do is take your arms, turn them all the way in, and lift them as high as you think you can. And you're only going to be able to reach this high until you externally rotate, and then you can bring your arms up the rest of the way. And that extra external rotation is because this part of this bone actually hits your scapula, and you need to externally rotate to get that arm all the way above your head.
Well, it's really interesting to me that you're talking about force and overhead movement, because I'm thinking of racket sports and baseball and all of these things that could really do in your shoulder.
It's not even that. It's something as simple. Like even for myself right now, I've overdone it over the last 3 days, just exercising excessively, a lot of workout in the yard and everything. I have bicipital tendonitis right now from repetitive strain, and it was from repetitive push-ups. We did a push-ups challenge to failure. Then I had to move a bunch of stuff, and it was just overloading the tissues in my body, basically, is what I'm looking at. So
I have a question for you. One of the risk factors for RSI is hypermobility. That means when your joints are very mobile and you can bend them out of range of motion. Would that also apply with shoulder injuries?
100%. If you look at, again, back to that initial statement, one of the big things that everybody should realize, and I can't stress it enough, we always mention it with patients, 50% of your shoulder stability comes from the small muscles of the rotator cuff, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and subscapularis. They make a cuff, the name literally comes from a cuff of your shirt wrapping around the head of the humerus. And if those muscles don't fire correctly, this joint becomes unstable and they start to slide around. Like if you look at this, I couldn't design a much more unstable joint than the glenohumeral joint right here, because it's a large rounded surface on an almost flat surface like this that has nothing but range to give you, that's easy to slide out of position and only really held in place by these small muscles that keep you active. So that instability leads to the joint sliding around a lot more. And if it slides around more, it results in muscle injuries, it results in osteoarthritis potentially later on. All types of other injuries can occur out of this. One of the biggest exercises we give, and I treat a lot of like professional jiu-jitsu guys, a lot of weightlifters, is we give small, simple rotator cuff exercises to develop good strength on this, is what you're looking for.
What do you think about people who do overhead lifts with really heavy weights in the gym?
Yeah, so I think right there, at the end of the day, you can definitely train your way up to it, and some people want to do it, but your shoulders are not designed for that. The shoulders are designed for mobility, not stability. So the mobility out of your shoulders was for you to reach up and grab some fruit, for you to go ahead and grab that lower branch and pull yourself away from the saber-toothed cat or whatever else it was. Stability, elbow is a great stable joint, right? Scapula, 17 muscles attached to that. Go to the joints on either side and you have good stability right there. But as far as the glenohumeral joint, this shoulder joint, heavy weights lead to injuries.
I'm happy that you said that. I know an attorney who actually gave himself RSI because he was lifting law books, and you know how heavy they can be, and
Yep.
putting them in a shelf over his head. And I think that people maybe don't appreciate enough the way a cumulative movement could actually add up to a shoulder injury. But in terms of keeping the shoulder healthy, generally, I give people shoulder exercises to do almost every day or every other day if they're doing them with weights,
Yep.
you know, mainly to stabilize these shoulder joints. But what are your favorite ones? I know mine, but I want to know
Yeah,
what you
no, we were
think.
talking. It's funny because we were talking about this ahead of time. A little bit of weight is going to be fine, but usually what I wind up picking for patients is going to be resistance tubing exercises or even 5 or 10 pound weights at the most. And some of the best exercises that you can do for your shoulders are going to be simple YTWs. And I know that we already talked about that ahead of time. So when you're looking at that, it's just a simple range of motion, lifting your arms up into a nice Y shape. Okay, this opens up the front of the chest, gives you good range to move back, and brings and initiates the lower part of your trapezius and other muscles back here. Most people in a day in today's urbanized environments are not doing that. All right, the T's are just going to be bring it up to the side and explore that range. Bring yourself back and forth into that range. And then the W's, you make a W shape like this, and you work on keeping your shoulder blades down and scapulas back together. Again, all of this is influencing overall range of motion of the shoulder to create a stable, functional joint is what you're trying to create. Excessive weights, especially when you see people slam and really pushing hard to put things up, that's when you really hurt yourself, is those uncontrolled movements like that.
Well, thank you for giving us this wonderful information, Dr. Vizniak. And as usual, we're both on the same page because I do exactly the same thing. I never give people weights holding up over their head because it's too much of a risk. Thank you so much for this general introduction to the shoulder. Next time we meet, we're going to be talking about rotator cuff injuries, so you don't want to miss that. Meantime, I want to thank Dr. Vizniak for coming on the show, sharing his extensive knowledge with us, and thank you all for watching, and please subscribe.